In today's episode, we're going to hear from Rob, the one-man machine that is Hereafter. Rob lives on the east coast of the US. He's a drummer first and foremost, but also plays guitar, bass. He records all his own music, he mixes his own music, he masters his own music. So grab a drink, grab an easy chair, and let's settle in and listen to Rob's journey so far. Let's just dive into it. So tell us all about you, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
All right. Well, I'm Rob. I do Hereafter. Rob Evraets Jr. for those of you who want to know. I do Hereafter. That is my solo project. It started around 2019, right after I started building what is now this studio that I have. It was more of a project to see what I could do, and then it turned into something a lot more fun and bigger than I thought it would. I'm based out of the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, which is about an hour north of Philadelphia and about an hour southwest of New York City. So I'm kind of like right in the middle there. It's kind of an ideal spot. Go to the beach an hour away, go to the city, go to the other city, see everything. I was a saxophone player, and I was just marveled by the drums in the jazz band. I had a friend, he played the drums and I would watch him play. And then one day at the end of practice, I sat down behind the drums after practice and started playing what he was playing just by watching him. And he was like, "When did you learn how to play drums?" And I said, "I didn't. I just sat there and watched you for the last month or so and put two and two together." So I went home, told my parents I didn't want to play the sax anymore. So there was a drum set in our basement, and I basically sat there and taught myself how to play drums over, the course of a few summers, and grew up in a house of music anyway. There was always guitars to mess around with in the house. I didn't really take to guitar right away. He gave me my first guitar, which was a red Kramer Striker, which I still have. I'll never get rid of that guitar. I don't really play it much because I'm not a fond of the sound, but
yeah, you got to keep that.
That was the first guitar I got. Ecstatic about playing drums. That was like my life at that point, 16, just wanting to play drums and play music and be in bands. And it was right around mid-20s when I started really taking the guitar more, just because I was living in an apartment and couldn't really play the drums. And then we bought our house in 2018, and that's when I was like, all right, it's time to do this. We're going to build the studio and I'm going to try and record music, without the intent of even doing anything with Hereafter. Hereafter wasn't even a thought yet. It was, hey, let's just build a studio and let's record some music with some friends. And I was in a band at the time, and we were recording music constantly, but we were never releasing it. I was constantly being frustrated by that. And that's when I said, okay, it's time to do my own thing. I don't want to be stuck with other people who don't want to release music. And it was just a whole thing. And it was rough because I have all this music on a hard drive, and it's 4 years of recording, and they're good songs. I'm pretty sure you've heard a few of them over the last year or so when I've gone back into the archives and over the course of a few months that summer. And I was just more testing myself to see, hey, am I able to do this on my own? Do I have enough skill on guitar? I knew I had skill on drums to do it, but on guitar. And that was my first test, and I did that and wasn't expecting much from it and didn't really see a lot of headway on it, but it was kind of just more for myself to say, hey, yeah, I can do this. So I put those out, and then for the next year or so from there, I worked on Reminiscent with them. I didn't really know if it was post-rock or if I was just going to get vocals or something at that post. So that's the route I went. And then that came out in December of 2020. And a week later, I met Jill from Oriana, and she wanted to do some collaborating. Me started with the Post Everything Collective, because then she invited me into that group, which eventually became Post Everything, which was a huge motivator and a huge influence over what my second record was, In the End We'll All Become Stories, because I hit a huge writing wave right after Reminiscence, and I wrote the next album in maybe 3 months, and it was ready to go and released in 7 months after Reminiscent. I learned from the people within the Post Everything Collective, and just, absorbing it all blew up compared to the first one. This Life is a Beautiful War. And that's 12 songs that I wrote. And there's 3 collaboration songs on there with 3 people from the Post Everything Collective.
I mean, this is like the easiest conversation I've ever had. I ask you one question and it just comes from you. So you're very well versed in your backstory. Why drums? Why did you gravitate in a house full of guitars towards drums?
I've never actually quite thought about that one. How my friend was playing, and I said, you know what, I could probably do that way better than what I'm doing right now. And that looks so much more fun than what I'm doing right now. And like, I grew up in a neighborhood. It was really kind of cool. We joke about this to this day. Like, we had a really cool setting for the neighborhood. It was up on a hill and it was a circle. It was like a block. And there was like 8 or 9 of us that lived up there and hung out and grew up together our whole lives. Those people all started playing guitar and bass, and there was only one drummer, and it was the person who I saw playing in middle school, but he didn't really play that like with bands. He wasn't really into that. So that was really the motivation behind it.
Yeah.
I think it was intimidating to play guitar for me at first because my dad is like really, really, really good and he can shred. Never took any formal lessons for drum set or guitar. When I was in the middle school band and the high school band, there was drum corps, which was basically like a marching drums.
And I think this is a theme that I wanted to get into that because I think this is a theme I want to come on to about something else with you, but also I think runs through a lot of the gang in the Post Everything collective. So just to clarify, in case anyone watching hasn't gathered this yet, Rob is Hereafter. He writes the music, records the music, mixes the music, masters the music, promotes the music, markets the music, and everything, right? You're the creative director.
A lot of hats to wear
for Hereafter, yeah. So you're constantly doing what you just described in terms of when you learnt drums, learnt guitar. You're absorbing information, and then you're going out, you're creating your own strategy, and you're implementing it and executing, right, to whatever your artistic intention is. So, what is it about you that makes you want to do that? What's your motivation?
I don't know. I've always strived to find a band with a certain sound that I could never find. So when it came to Hereafter and when I started to figure out my sound, that was a huge influence on it. And I think personally it translates well into my music in a sense that I have the big reverbs and the big sounding, like heavier guitars, but I don't overkill the heaviness. Like I try to create a space so that everything can kind of sit nicely.
Why do you have a thirst for knowledge, for learning, and for pushing yourself across multiple fronts all at the same time?
I think that stems from the band that I had played in that never released any music. I think I saw it as, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it myself. And if I'm going to do it myself, I'm going to do it right. So let me figure out the best way to do this, the easiest and most efficient way to do this without having to bring in other parties.
Yeah.
So I'd say that would be my most well-rounded answer for that. The fact that I just wanted to be the go-getter and just do it myself and not have to wait on other people.
What does that look like in reality? So, the writing process, recording process, all the processes through to releasing it and everything you do post-release. Because that's not, you say the easiest way to do it. It's by far from easy, right?
Yeah, it's not an easy process. I'd say my writing method and my recording method are not your conventional, I'm going to sit down and write a song. I'm kind of all over the place at times. So I typically will start with a riff that I like on guitar, maybe 30 seconds of it. I'll play it to a click track, I'll record it, and then I'll sit at the drums and I will write like 10 minutes of drums just to that riff. And then I'll rearrange it essentially. Tons of different variations of beats and fills that are to that same BPM to a click track. And then as soon as I rearrange it, I'll actually go record the drums in the arrangement that they are. And then I'll record the guitars. I usually do the drums, rhythm guitars, some lead guitars wherever I hear it in my head. And then bass usually comes last for me.
Yeah, definitely. That's the way it should be. Bass is always last. No, only joking. You've mentioned your room that's behind. You don't need to obviously show us now, but what's the setup like that you've got in there?
Okay. So it's actually at my house. We have a ranch house. So like it's a long ways. The whole basement is the size of the house, which is beautiful, which immediately to me, when we bought the house, I was like, yep, that's all I need. That's my checklist. I bought a lot of studio foam and made it a little more acoustically treated. The drums, they're mic'd up. There are mics for every drum. There's overhead mics, and there are 3 room mics spread out across the room. There's a mono room mic across from the drums, and then there's 2 stereo room mics about 15 feet from the drums on each side, on each wall.
Nice.
Where I'm sitting is really like the control hub. I have my studio monitors, I have my pedals for my guitars, which I know you love. To the right of me, there's 4 guitars. To the left of me, there's 1 guitar here, and 1 guitar there. And then behind me, you can't see, but there's 2 bass guitars as well. And then there's the other side of the basement. So there's a wall behind me, or in front of me. And there's another half of the basement, and that's like the storage side.
Damn. Okay.
So that's where I keep my amps and anything that I'm not using music-wise, guitar cases and whatnot. But or my buddies will keep their amps there so that they're out of the way when we're using the basement for other. But there's also an area where I can just sit here and enjoy music. I have pretty hefty vinyl collection that I've accrued over the last however many years. So if I'm not recording music and not playing music, I'll come down here and just listen to my favorite vinyl. That's one of my favorite things to do, is just come down here for inspiration.
Awesome. All this stuff, Rob, it takes time, right? It takes a lot of time, especially when you're doing everything from start to finish. So how do you make it fit around your work, your relationships? How do you get it all in, and where's the time come from?
It has never been a huge challenge, for me at least. I know the way I work, your typical 9 to 5. Well, in my case, 7:30 to 4. I would work on things after work once in a while if I had time. Like if there's a day that I got done working and there was just something I wanted to get out, I would eat dinner, and then I would say, hey, I'm going to go down a little bit. Saturday and Sundays are really my big time for it. Like Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, like I'm as you know, I'm up early every day anyway.
Yeah.
So I would be done with my routine in the morning, and then from like 8 a.m. until like maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
You mentioned, Rob, a few times that you're clearly a structured guy. You've clearly got a load of drive and motivation. I think that's obvious to anyone listening to you now. You've talked about your early morning routines. You get up early, you do your thing. What does that include?
4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, just about every day. So people are probably like, what the hell are you doing? I get up, I go for a run, and that is actually my time to like catch up on music. Like music that other people are releasing or favorite bands. Because I'm out there for about an hour. I run about 7 miles or so. Don't know how many kilometers that is.
Well, no, we're miles. We're miles.
Oh, you're miles out there.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. I did not know that. 7 miles every morning, about an hour.
So what time are you in bed then? What time do you go to sleep?
Sometimes like 9:30.
Yeah.
10
okay.
p.m. If I mean, some nights I'm tired from work. Like work can be exhausting. So like I'll be done at work at 4 o'clock, eat dinner, and just chill on the couch. We'll watch some TV, Netflix or whatever, and then pass out at like 8. Some nights, right? 9:30 usually, 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'll bat it again tomorrow morning.
I'm just checking you're getting enough sleep, Rob. That's what I'm doing there. So I'm just worried about you. It feels like there's a theme, right? That you're very like focused. You know what you want, and you just commit and go for it. And I think that comes through. Do you feel that yourself?
Yeah, I do at times. Some days I feel lazy. Like if I have a day where I just don't want to run and I don't, I'm like, I'm so lazy. But then I look back and I'm like, I can't be that lazy. I've been running like this for like the last 10 years. So
it's all relative.
There's days like that. You kind of get the feeling like that you're not doing enough. Like even if you are doing so much extra, like I get like that with my work too. Like I feel like I'm not doing enough, but like I should be doing more. I should be doing more. So you constantly push. I mean, it does get to a point though where you burn out. So you got to be careful too.
So I'm going to ask you what the best thing is about being an independent one-person army of noise that is Hereafter. What's the best thing about it?
I don't have to answer to anyone. Like I can sit here and be like, this is a good idea or this is a shit idea. And I don't have to hear like, well, I like this idea. No, but I don't like this idea. Like it's so much faster.
Yeah.
That like I can just get it done.
And are you quite decisive then? Because I guess some people would freak out at that, right? That they haven't necessarily got people to bounce it off and get that sense of security from the group that, this is a good idea, Rob.
Yeah. I mean, I can, at one point or another in the life of a song, if I'm writing it, I'll decide whether or not to change the entire thing. change parts of it, or just be, hey, this is it, this is done. I'm not going to keep pushing it, because if I keep pushing it, it's going to get turned into mud.
Yeah.
So like it's one of three decisions. It's, do I change the whole thing? Do I add or change little parts here and there, or am I done?
Yeah.
And I kind of know when I'm done when I go through the song and I can't find parts that I either want to change or add to. Like if I think, oh, if I add to this, it's going to be too much, or if I don't add to this, it's going to be a gap. Like,
Yeah.
I know what to do, but I could say I'm pretty decisive when it comes to finishing something and just moving on, because I think that was a lesson I learned in the band that never released any music. Was it was never done. It was never done. I need one more part. And I think that's what frustrated me the most, was that like I was happy with a lot of the songs, and like I thought, as is, like these are good songs, people will enjoy this, like we should totally release this. But on the other side of it, it's not like that. So I think that's more the motivation for it.
And do you impose like restrictions on yourself? So do you set deadlines? I want this finished by here. I want to release music here. And do you work backwards from there, or do you just go with the flow and see what comes out?
It's kind of a mix of that. Like right now in my head, for whatever comes next, I'm like, I want to do something next July. Like I want to have something by next July. So like,
why next July?
I figure it's a nice long period of time after what I just did, and in the meantime, I may come up with singles that may not fit on whatever I'm doing, so I can release those singles and it won't overkill it.
Yeah.
But I figure, July is a nice year and a month or so away from what I've done now, and so, and I don't know, I just feel like I write music that resonates well with a summer mood. If that makes any sense. Like I always feel like, well, this is a good summery vibe.
Say your music is like, when it's a nice sunny day, and it's humid, and then suddenly out of nowhere, thunderstorm clouds come over. That's what that'd be like the weather that I describe Hereafter, right? It's kind of like ominous, and heavy, but there's a lot of prettiness to it too. But do you feel like, as a listener and as a creator, do you feel like music and seasonality is a crossover?
Absolutely. I actually have playlists on my Apple Music that are for certain times of year.
Oh, awesome.
Where I'll go back and listen to things, even if it's like something that I listened to forever ago. Which is why I love what Greg does with Secret Gardens, because like he's actually writing it to the seasons, and he's done a fantastic job at encompassing those feelings with both seasons so far, or three. He's actually got the summer one too that's really, really awesome. So he's got three of them.
He's got 3 seasons. He's 1 season short of a full album. So look, we've heard your sort of best thing about being a solo artist. You get to be the boss. What's the worst thing?
The worst is you get to be the boss. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's nice to have those people to bounce ideas off of or get that perspective from. But I think I've kind of been extremely fortunate in that, when timing wise, I should say, I've been very fortunate, because when I met all the people that are in the Post Everything Collective, that became my, hey, I need to bounce this idea off of somebody to see if it sucks, or to see if this is something I should roll with. And so it was almost like you had a band, but you didn't have people playing in the band with you. It was just like an audience that you could say, hey, is this good? Or what would you recommend I do? And like, you could take that advice or you couldn't, and nobody's going to get offended by it. So like, I could send you a song and you could be like, hey, I think you should do this, that, and the other thing. And I can get it back and not do any of those things. And like, we'll just, everyone's happy. And I think the timing of that, in a sense, that when I met everybody from that was what I needed for Hereafter to take it to that next step.
So it'd be remiss of me not to talk a little bit about gear, right? Or you to talk a little bit about gear. Obviously you're like primarily a drummer, so feel free to talk about drums for a few minutes, because there will be some drum fans out there. What's your go-to gear, Rob?
For drums, I have been playing on a Gretsch, a maple set. Had it for a few years. Played the Tamas for years, traded those up for the Orange Counties, and then I ended up with what I have now, the Gretsch. And I can honestly say the Gretsch drums are my absolute favorite. Um, they're maple. They sound fantastic, and I wouldn't trade them. Wouldn't trade them for anything at this point. It just has to sound good to me. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I don't. It's not a matter of brands. Like, you know how it is with guitars. Like, if you find a guitar that sounds good, it doesn't have to be a Fender, a Gibson, or what have you. Like, it could be anything. If you like the way it sounds, that's your guitar. Cymbals, I've always stuck with Zildjian, the A series, not the A customs. The A customs were a little too thin for my liking, and the A series just had a nice recorded sound, but they also have a really great live sound. So like, it was kind of the best of both worlds when I started recording. They sound good on the recording, and they don't get too washy and too shiny sounding. Sticks, I use ProMark 747, which I use the wood tip. And this is actually really chopped up right now, but I use the 747 ProMarks, and I use Remo drum heads. Microphones range from Shure to AKG to Audix. And that's it for drums. Oh, pedals are DW. The pedals are DW, and the hardware, like the cymbal stands and everything, are Gibraltar. Gibraltar makes some really solid hardware, so I highly recommend that if you're looking for hardware that's not too expensive, that can handle the abuse that comes with it. So
Yeah. What about guitars, Rob? Let's move on to things I know a little bit about. You've just been speaking another language to me then for about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Guitars, I have quite a few. A Fender Mexican Telecaster.
Rob, go and grab your favorite. I'm going to make you make a snap decision. Yeah, snap decision though. Choose between your babies.
My actual favorite one is upstairs right now, but this is the one I recorded most of the last album with. This is a Charvel. This is a Charvel, and it's actually the Joe Duplantier model from Gojira. And I found that this guitar sounds the best anywhere, anything that I record with it, whether it's distorted, whether it's washy reverb, delay, everything.
Yeah.
It just had the most full sound ever, and it's such a nice guitar to play. So yeah, I'd say this is my favorite one to record with.
What tuning do you play in, Rob? I never actually asked you that before. What's your standard sort of tuning you go for?
It varies. So what is it? The American football uses the FAC GCE. I have a few songs that I use that.
Okay.
Typically I'm in standard or drop D. The heavier songs, Resolution was one. That was drop C. And that guitar behind me, that Jackson, that's my drop C guitar. And then I have another Charvel upstairs.
Yeah.
That is also a drop C guitar, so that I have a few options for drop C. This guitar typically stays in drop D or standard. I have two Tellys, Fender Tellys. One of them is modded that has a quarter pounder in the neck pickup, and the bridge is a little 59 pickup. And that's more of a heavier Telly sound, but it still has that nice fat Telly sound that everybody loves. But it's a little more diverse in the sense that I could play some heavier stuff if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Because that little 59 is like a mini humbucker.
Yeah.
So that would be this guitar. It's nice surf green.
Nice.
Yeah, this is a nice.
And that's the one you've got modded pickups in, yeah?
Yes. You could see. I don't know if you could see in the camera here. You got the little 59 and the quarter pounder, both by Seymour Duncan, and they sound great.
Show me your other telly, Rob. Have you got it there?
Oh yeah, I do. Let me grab it.
Because I'm a Fender boy, so.
Well, you know about this one. This is the standard. The Sunburst. This was my first telly.
Yeah, and you can really tell the difference between that and the one you've modded, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. This is strictly clean for me.
Yeah.
I can use it with distorted, but for the Hereafter stuff, a little heavier. So I need some humbuckers for that.
Yeah.
It's the regular telly for what I was doing with Hereafter. So that was why I modded the other one, and I was obsessed with the finish on the other one. So it was one of those you gotta have it.
Yeah.
buys. And then when I got it, I was like, I don't need two tellies with the same pickups. I'm going to mod one of these, and that's when I did it with the surf green one.
Yeah. Talk to me about pedals.
Pedals. I didn't start messing with pedals actually until this album. It was right before I started writing. It was actually the inspiration behind a lot of the earlier songs of this album was because I had these pedals and I wanted to use them and create these really cool sounds. So, I follow your channel. So I would always see like what you were reviewing, and certain ones resonated with me for a while. First one obviously was the Strymon, the Big Sky. That was I bought that and the Timeline together. Those two pedals I used quite a bit for a while, and I still do all the time. I use the Big Sky more than the Timeline, but I like to use them together.
Yeah.
I love the reverse sound on the Timeline. Like if you do those reverse, whatever you want to call it. I'm not as well versed with the pedals as you, but I've found my.
It's not a bad thing, Rob, because unlike me, you release music, so that's all right.
And then you turned me on to the Microcosm, which was quite a trip to learn. I'm still learning it. So Big Sky, Timeline, Microcosm.
Yeah.
And then I have two Earthquaker devices. I have the Astral Destiny and the Avalanche Run. So with the Sunlight, that immediately inspired what became Farewell, My Friend. I wrote that in a day. And then, I wrote the clean part in a day. The heavy part came months later when I decided to add to it.
I think it's really noticeable as well, listening to your newest album, Rob, compared to your previous.
Yeah.
That was the thing that stood out to me. In addition to the songwriting, probably, again, my opinion, and I haven't told you this yet, so be careful what I say. Probably felt like it evolved another stage forward. There were sort of hidden layers and nuances that you were, and different emotions really that you're bringing in through subtle use of pedals that I think probably were lacking on your previous releases.
Yeah.
So kudos for that, because I think that works really well. And in terms of the Dark Star, anything like Farewell, My Friend, anything where you're doing, because you've got a couple of tracks on both your albums, I think, where it'll be a bit of a low-key, almost ambient track. The Dark Star's like killer for that sort of stuff, just to add some little nuances and sort of weird panned noises. That's just like awesome for that. A bit like the Microcosm in a sense.
I absolutely love the Mosaic feature on the Microcosm. That's like my go-to.
Yeah.
Every time, just because it grows, I love it.
I reckon if Hologram released a smaller version pedal just with Mosaic on and nothing else, I reckon it was like a fifth of the price, I reckon it'd sell bucket loads, because that is probably everyone's most favorite.
Absolutely. Set. You could just have a Microcosm and do so much. Like, it's insane. Like, that's probably one of my favorite. That's probably my favorite pedal. That one and the Sunlight. If I had to get rid of every pedal except those two, I could do that.
Right, I'm going to ask you one more question before we wrap up. What does success look like for you with regards to the music that you make?
Not money. That's
a good job.
I would love nothing more than to do for a living.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not sustainable in the current world of music, because streaming, as much as we love to have the access to music as readily available, you have all this music, but the artists suffer. That being said, success to me is when I see just one person or hear from one person that says, this hit me to the core. Like, or I see that comment on the premiere, on the Where Post Rock Dwells premiere or a YouTube page or wherever, that just says, this struck a nerve with me. Like, this hit me to the core. This is beautiful. Like, when I see things like that, to me, that's success. When I see that people are connecting with it on their own emotional level without me having to have vocals to tell them how they should feel or how this song should be perceived, like people connecting with it on their own terms. And when I see that, that's how I know, like, regardless of how many streams it gets or how much money it makes, like, I know I'm not doing this for a job. Like, I just want people to connect with the music in a way that I connect with it. And if one person gets that, then to me, that's success.
Thankfully, a lot more than one person is getting that, Rob. So it's a beautiful thing. And This Life is a Beautiful War is out now. And again, the link's down below. Definitely check it out. If you're into anything post-related or even rock-related, I think there's going to be something there for everyone. Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed getting to know you a bit better and spending a bit of time kind of face-to-face, albeit via a dodgy Wi-Fi connection from the other side of the world. But thanks for joining us, and hopefully see you back again on the channel in the future.
Absolutely, dude. I really appreciate you having me, and it's been a pleasure talking with you, man.
Thanks for watching. All of the links to Hereafter's releases are down in the comments, so please do check those out. If you want to see any of the other Meet the Musician episodes in this series, then I'll link some here. And of course, if you would do me the pleasure of subscribing and hitting that bell for notifications, then I'd love to see you here back on the channel in future. Thank you for watching.